great friend of President Washington and the rebel army of America, Tadeusz Kościuszko. Just let's talk about these guys briefly. The greatness astounds even me. So, 303 Kościuszko Squadron was the most effective Polish RAF squadron, to say the least. Though, if you Google these guys, the top says they were invited to the London Victory Parade of 1946, but they were not allowed to march. So I love Pappy Bowington of the Baba Black Sheep Squadron, and hey, I love Robbie Conrad who played it. But they really weren't as good, or they were just as good, or maybe they weren't, who knows. But they got a little fanfare. No one loves the indigenous Indians more than the Poles. There's a statue made by a great Polish sculptor that we'll talk about at another time. So the question is, what's the most successful fighter squadron in World War II? Well, it's the Luftwaffe. But we don't want to talk about that. The enemy. But what's the best fighter squadron of World War II on the Allied side? Incredibly, if you look up pound for pound, it's Polish 303 Kościuszko Squadron. After the war, some of the Polish airmen settled in Britain and continued the service in the RAF as flight instructors. But nobody knew these guys. The flight leader is Vital Obanowitz. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Let me just check. Squadron leader. Sorry, this is so informal, but this is just the beginning. Um, so, again, I didn't mean to disrespect saying it was the Germans that were the best. They were the best, in numbers on their side, the enemy. And Eric Hartmann might be the best pilot ever. But looking at the Allies' side, it's clearly, technically, the Poles. Got to give the Poles and the English credit. They were in the war a long time. But I cut to the chase since I'm Polish. I say they beat the German Luftwaffe overall. So let me contradict myself. The best of the war is 303. So they were unfamiliar with the language and everything. They get a shout out by Laurence Olivier, Sir Larry Olivier, in the movies, but he just says one line, "Oh, I underestimate the Poles." 303 Squadron is linked to the original 1919 Squadron. Don't forget, the Poles beat Trotsky and Stalin in 1920, the most unknown war story in history in some cases. They were chased around Europe. The French, who were concerned about getting involved in World War II, kind of dismissed them. And they had to run to England, something like escaping, like Star Wars or something. I was just checking to make sure I've got the squadron leader's name pronounced right. So the Battle of Britain, August through October 1940. I make the argument it was the most complicated and the worst of all battles. So just Google. Use the Google Did a few reckless pilots save the world? I tip the hat to the black pilots, also hit up with racism, whatnot. But the Poles are almost completely unknown. 303 Squadron is certainly ranked among the best fighter units in the world, if not the best, in my opinion. See the movie that stars a fellow from um, the sword and sorcery movie. Not Lord of the Rings, the other one. Game of Thrones, yes. And every Pole or Polish American should cultivate memory and legacy of the brave pilots who stood up to the totalitarian regime. There were other great squadrons, 302, 301, all fighting under the British. They had become good enough to become flight instructors for the British, much like my much beloved Pappy Boyington, who I was mentioned. It's Colonel Vito Obanowitz, yeah. I argue in some cases that he's the greatest pilot of World War II, and hear me out. Colonel Obanowitz doesn't get tremendous kill records of Eric Hartmann or others in the RAF and another Czech pilot, but he had eyes in the back of his head. He's the fight leader, just like Boyington, who I enjoy Baba Black Sheep, right? Just like Boyington, he fought with the Flying Tigers. And he was a teacher. But he went back to work totally unknown. Again, not allowed to march. So even if you hate what I'm saying, getting angry about my references in the last video to Audie Murphy and Pappy Boyington or whatever, and I'm not focusing, hear me out. I'm going to talk about Stanley Gobretsky, Polish-American, who had the most kills in the European theater, arguably making him the best American pilot. Nobody knows him. I kind of didn't like the look of Stanley Francis Gobretsky's airplane with the huge thick nose, but hey, he won. And he fought alongside the Poles over there. The Greatest Allied book, and there's other ones on 303 Kościuszko Squad that are out there. It's time to read Norm Davies' books as well about the war in 1920. Colonel Witold Obanowicz is portrayed by the best actor of Poland, whose name escapes me at the moment. But hey, he's in the beginning of the new Tom Cruise movie, brothers and sisters. So don't miss him. I'm going to be talking more about this stuff from Poland, and I hope that I offend people or get them talking about this. Witold Obanowicz, Polish leading ace in World War II, flew combat with the Polish Air Force and the Royal Air Force, and with the U.S. Army Air Corps in China. He was born in 1908 and grew up under Russian occupation. So these guys never had any peace. Taken over by the Soviet Russians and the Nazi Germans. Polish people never get a break, right? They should be noted for their boxing prowess and in the MMA, which I'm going to be talking about more later too. Polish ace. He got the Flying Cross. Read about Witold Obanowicz. And again, I leave you with this. Not allowed to march on Victory Day. God bless everyone, and hope you have a great day. Hope you're enjoying my hopefully provocative little stories about Poland and Polish Americans. God bless you. 100 lat. Dziękuję. Dzień dobry. Peace out.